Hey everyone, how's it going? Today I'll be talking about a specific set of games that hold a special place in my library. You know the place I'm talking about. The one that you do your best to avoid, but not because you hate it, but maybe because you love it just a little too much. These are the games that I've drained hours upon hours on and would still play again in a heartbeat if it weren't for the fact that I have other titles sitting on the shelf shamefully being neglected. This is a list that I've dubbed as my favorite time vampires. Of course, such a game largely depends on your personal preferences, so I'll be going over some of the more specific reasons why these picks have taken away so many of my days. I'll be ordering the list roughly by the amount of time I've spent with each one. First up is a rather quirky sandbox type, something you'll be seeing a lot of here. Slime Rancher takes first-person shooter gameplay and turns it into an adorable open-world adventure on an alien planet. As a young up-and-coming rancher, you take on the Far Far Range, a distant planet inhabited by a variety of cute and colorful slime creatures who love to eat, play, and plort. These plorts also happen to be rather valuable assets to the ranchers, both on the market and as materials for refining and creating helpful gadgets. As you explore, you'll find different types of slimes to bring back home with you. As you build the ranch up, you'll need to keep them adequately fed and happy, otherwise you may find them escaping, or worse. If a slime eats the plort of another, it becomes a Largo slime, which combines the traits of each type. If that Largo eats yet another different type of plort, it turns into a vicious tar, a rather gruesome creature which will try to eat every man, woman, and slime that it sees. So it's up to you to make sure that you keep everything in check while you expand the ranch and make new discoveries. Overall, Slime Rancher is a simple, slow-paced, and highly enjoyable game. Definitely a great pick for a mellow afternoon of gaming. Of course, if you want to keep a similar simplistic style with a more nightmarish setting, Unturned is certainly no letdown. This first-person horror takes the gameplay of DayZ and turns it into a comically low-poly mission to survive. You have to keep yourself fed, hydrated, and safe from the clutches of the flesh-eating zombies that surround the various maps. As simple as it may look, there is a lot of depth built into the game. It features crafting, base building, online PvP gameplay, RPG-style skill upgrades, and a lot more. All of which is really impressive considering that it was designed by just one indie developer, and released for free. A small $5 upgrade gets you some permanent perks including extra character slots, additional customization options, and some exclusive accessories. You'll also get access to the premium servers. But honestly, I love playing games like this solo. To me, it feels like I'm playing some kind of LEGO Walking Dead. The graphics may look terrible, but I still jump whenever one of these blocky zombies appears around a corner. There are currently 6 maps to choose from, and lots of community mods to play with. The game was officially released out of early access in 2017, and still continues to get regular updates with gameplay improvements and additional content. Certainly a good way to devour some free time, if you can survive long enough. The next adventure may not be first person, but it will definitely test your survival skills in terms of platformers. Rogue Legacy is a roguelite action platformer by Cellar Door Games that leads you through a lineage of heroes as they attempt to defeat the evils within the castle. And in good roguelike style, the castle layout changes every time you die. Not only that, but the character you play changes as well. Each fallen hero has a selection of successors to follow in their footsteps. And when I say that each successor has their own strengths and weaknesses, this includes some highly amusing hereditary traits like being nearsighted, dyslexic, colorblind, and lots more. Some different traits may even be useful for slipping into secret areas. These come randomly along with a variety of classes like knights, barbarians, mages, and such. The longer you survive, the more loot you can find to help improve your stats, skills, and equipment for the next generations. The gameplay is challenging and I love the enemy variety. You may find yourself at a quick demise or even taking out one of the 4 major bosses in each section of the castle. Either way, I always find Rogue Legacy to be a highly addictive platformer. The music is great and the pixel art style is very well done. Well worth spending some time with the family. This next one on the list is going to seem pretty obvious. You take everything great about a Diablo-like and flip it around into a comical sci-fi first-person shooter. Borderlands is exactly that. Now, I have to admit that I came into the party late. In fact, I picked up Borderlands 2 many years ago and I barely played it. Unfortunately, I have this terrible affliction that makes me think it's important to play games in order. I know, it's awful. Well, eventually I did get Borderlands as well as the pre-sequel, allowing me to expose myself to what can only be described as a horrible addiction. Plain and simple, Gearbox took the formula for a first-person shoot-and-loot RPG and nailed it. It doesn't hold your hand, and I never feel unrewarded for completing a difficult objective. And I love the fact that it takes that Mad Max post-apocalyptic feel and then throws in dialogue and characters that are anything but serious. This is one of those games that I have a difficult time putting down once I get started. Whether you play solo or with friends, I'd say any Borderlands game is going to be a great way to blow your time away. Moving on, it's hard to believe that it was 10 years ago that we saw the first release of one of the greatest games ever made. A game that is still incredible to this day. Of course, my computer sucked back then, so Skyrim was not an option. So I decided to try Elder Scrolls Oblivion instead. And you know what? That was pretty damn good too. I'd heard a lot about them, but I never actually played an Elder Scrolls game before 2011, and after experiencing the fourth entry in the series, I was a true believer. It wasn't perfect by any means, and oftentimes it seemed like it was barely being held together by community mods and bug fixes. But Oblivion is easily responsible for draining countless hours of time from my life. I found the vast open world of Cyrodiil to be absolutely amazing, and I was completely sucked into the incredible amount of lore created for it. I played through it a number of times with different character builds, and I still haven't seen everything that there is to see. No doubt, looking back at each game in the series is like going back in a time machine to when such potato graphics were cutting edge. Regardless, it's still an enjoyable experience to see how Oblivion improved on the gameplay of Morrowind, and ultimately helped pave the way for Skyrim. It's well worth a playthrough, or maybe two. Subnautica is a title I featured as an honorable mention on a list of games I gave up on. I still haven't gone back on the main game or the latest entry Below Zero, and my reasons remain the same. If you're not familiar, Subnautica is another one of those open-world survival sandbox games that leaves you stranded on an alien world to explore, craft, and build until you realize that you haven't had any real sleep in days. It's challenging, but not too difficult that it can't be enjoyed by a casual gamer. The oceanic world is absolutely stunning to look at. The gameplay can be relaxing and then quickly become tense if your base starts taking on water, you start running out of resources, or when a certain somebody shows up to say hi. While there is a story to enjoy, most of your time will be spent creating and upgrading bases, recovering resources, and improving your mobility in the underwater environment. I actually haven't completed the story, and yet I've still dumped countless hours into this game. And while I do want to go back and add it to my completion list, I know that it will continue to drain massive amounts of time that I could be spending on the rest of my backlog. This is not a game I would recommend for killing an afternoon. You'll need to be prepared to drown at least an entire weekend at the very least. On my first glance at Terraria, I really didn't think much of it. It's just 2D Minecraft, right? Well, 100 hours later, it was proven to me that there was a lot more to it than that. In fact, it's as if someone just cracked open the public suggestion box on what would make an awesome open sandbox platform adventure, and then dumped it all into one package. Sure, there's mining and crafting, building, and all the usual things you would expect, but the sheer amount of content in any other game would usually require a bunch of extra mod packs to be installed, and this is just what Terraria includes out of the box. Rather than relying on any sort of plot or storyline objectives, Terraria simply provides players a vast variety of things to do. The life of exploration and building never becomes monotonous thanks to occasional events to keep you on your toes, like goblin and pirate raids. The world is host to various monsters and boss enemies that you can take on, as well as valuable treasures hidden in the more dangerous places on the map. On each side of your world you face some sort of evil biome filled with more aggressive enemies. Fortunately, there are literally hundreds of weapons, accessories, and armor variations to be found, crafted, and purchased from a variety of NPCs, provided you create adequate shelter for them to move into. Terraria is yet another one of those games that's easy to pick up and hard to put down. But if you've had enough adventuring on just one island, Starbound provides a very similar gameplay experience in the style of a sci-fi action adventure. While sharing many similarities with Terraria, Starbound takes you on a journey to a variety of different planets, each with their own unique features and inhabitants. You're presented with more objectives in terms of fulfilling story and NPC requests, but how you focus your goals is entirely up to you. You can customize your ship, hire NPCs to join your crew, and take on jobs like bounty hunting and delivering items. Starbound doesn't quite match the content variety of Terraria, but it easily makes up for it by further expanding the player's ability to explore and interact with the world. And that's saying a lot, because a large Terraria world provides a massive amount of space to explore. Starbound essentially does the same, with a whole galaxy of procedurally generated planets that you can dive into. And while both games allow you to choose different levels of difficulty, from casual to hardcore, playing survival mode in Starbound will also require you to keep yourself fed and protected from the elements to remain alive. There are just tons of things to do on your way to completing the numerous quests you'll encounter, and it's your choice how the adventure unfolds. Danger, Will Robinson. If you start this one, your free time is guaranteed to be lost in space. Diablo 2, Diablo 2. You weren't the first, but you were certainly the best. You are the Diablo that all the other Diablos look up to. But does Blizzard think I'm going to spend another $40 on a 21-year-old game just because they gave it a shiny new coat of paint?
Gladly.
Thus sealing the fate of many weekends to come. Now, I considered doing a full review of Resurrected, but honestly the fame of Diablo 2 is already well known. Yes, it's old, and you should definitely play it. Veterans will be happy to see that the gameplay is almost entirely unchanged, aside from a few conveniences like having a shared stash for your characters and being able to pick up gold automatically when you walk over it. Unfortunately, there have been a lot of server issues, and that recent login queue can be really annoying, especially when the game randomly crashes and sends you right back into the line. Either way, for a game that first came out in 2000, Diablo 2 is still fun as hell. Back in those days, I only had one friend with a PC powerful enough for gaming, and he was a huge Diablo fan. So when 2 came out, we all rushed over to watch him play it on their family computer. Years later, that same friend was doing some house cleaning and just handed his copy of Diablo 2 over to me. And so that began my journey into one of the greatest time vampires I've ever known. Strangely enough, I never finished it. I just kept restarting over and over with different classes. Eventually, some cruel Windows update had broken the game entirely. Thankfully, Blizzard patched it in 2015 to help it run on modern systems, but it wasn't until Resurrected that I finally finished the game in normal mode. It's a fantastic visual upgrade. Even my wife was psyched about it. She's not a horror fan by any means, but Diablo 2 just happens to be her favorite game of all time. Together, we've already drained numerous hours, or has it been days? Who cares? There's no rest for the wicked, and we've got demons who need killing. Now, it should be no surprise to see that Bethesda has more than a couple of games on this list. They have a formula for creating games that draw out massive amounts of game time. Fallout 4 is certainly no exception to that. Outside of the main campaign and various DLCs, players are tossed into a post-apocalyptic world that is jam-packed with side quests from a variety of companions, factions, and numerous other NPCs scattered across the map. Now, one aspect of Fallout 4 that you may or may not like is the addition of settlements, areas that you can take over to build bases on. These settlements get attacked every so often, so you'll need to make sure that they're adequately protected. Overall, it does make for a good way to keep safe points nearby while you're out scavenging abandoned buildings for scrap, or just taking a leisurely shooting spree through a raider hideout. And of course, there are tons of awesome mods available to help expand and improve on the various aspects of the game. Not even VATS will be able to save you from all the time that you've lost once you get started. And you may have noticed that there's a common theme with a lot of these games so far. There's a lot of sandbox and non-linear open-world games that are on here for pretty obvious reasons. But then you have Monster Hunter World, along with the Iceborne expansion. I could easily say that this is the one game in the series that I've given the most attention to, but that would be putting it lightly. This game is responsible for breaking 2 of my Xbox controllers by honest wear and tear. And this is a straight-up action game to the core. It doesn't matter if you're playing solo or online, it's an absolute blast to take on the giant beasts that inhabit the new world. If you're not familiar with this series, Monster Hunter deviates from the typical hack and slash by pitting players against a number of different, but mostly giant lizard-like creatures. Think of them kind of like a combo dinosaur, dragon, all kinds of other random things. But as the name implies, it's all about the hunt. Smaller monsters are just minor obstacles as you track down your main target. And once you have them in your sights, you and your party can make your move in a desperate battle to kill or trap the beast. And the harder the fight, the better the rewards. You can expect early battles to last as long as 20 minutes because these massive monsters are total damage sponges, even trying to run away if they lose enough health or just get bored. So you'll have to chase them down again to finish the job. But once it's done, you'll get rewarded with parts to make better gear with, and better gear enables you to take on stronger targets. It seems like a simple thing, and you may think it would be boring to drain so much time into individual battles, but you'd be wrong. Each battle is like a boss fight, sometimes becoming extremely chaotic when another monster shows up and joins the brawl. It's an adrenaline rush for sure, and I've lost hundreds of hours to it. Even with all that time, I still haven't nearly faced all the monsters that Capcom has added since then, so it could very easily chomp another chunk of my life away in the near future. Entering into the top 3 of my favorite time drains is No Man's Sky, and I'll admit that I was one of the many who jumped in on day one. There were many bugs and broken promises compared to the early gameplay trailer. Yeah, it wasn't great, but it wasn't exactly bad either. As the years went on, Hello Games has made some very significant improvements to the game overall, and it's now a much more expansive title. Anyone who avoids it because of the bad reviews from 5 years ago, now is the time to give it a shot. Some aspects of the gameplay do still feel a bit monotonous, but overall there's just so much to do that it can be difficult to get bored with it. Online is working, avatars are more customizable, you can build bases, mine resources, and set up teleporters for quick travel between solar systems. Not only that, but there are still tons of undiscovered planets and systems to be found, each with their own unusual plants and creatures to research. And if you get bored with that, you can find and upgrade a ship, fly off into space for some bounty hunting, or maybe even become a pirate yourself. The game is continuously being updated with fixes, improvements, and additions, the latest including the generation of alien settlements to explore. I have to say that I'm proud that the developers kept pressing on through the barrage of negative feedback to bring us a game that truly deserves to be on this list. Whether you decide to follow the storyline quest or just go freelance, once you start firing up the hyperdrive into uncharted space, you may find that your time mysteriously fell into a black hole along the way. Did I mention Bethesda on this list before? Anything about Skyrim, maybe? Because Skyrim. And I don't give a fuss or da what anyone else thinks. Skyrim is simply one of the greatest games ever created. I keep hearing people fussing about all the remastered editions and re-releases for newer gen consoles. I have one answer to that, because Bethesda created gold and they know it. They'd release a port on a smart refrigerator knowing that people will buy it because that's what people want. And this isn't just an exaggeration on my part. I've played the original PC release and the Legendary Edition numerous times with a variety of character builds. I refuse to play the VR version because I fear that I may never return. And let me give you my very specific reasoning on this. We've talked about the Bethesda formula before, where you take a main story quest in a big world and then shove in so many side quests that it could seemingly go on forever. And that's just one of the things that makes it great. Back when I was still in high school doing pen and paper RPGs with my friends, I took some deep thought into what would make a perfect RPG video game. This was still fairly early in the life of 3D graphics, and first-person games were mostly run-of-the-mill shooters. JRPGs were cool, but had nowhere near the level of immersion that I was thinking about. If only there was a way to create a 3D first-person gameplay perspective along with the pen and paper freedom to build and become your character. Little did I know, The Elder Scrolls Arena was already a thing at that point, but it would still take a lot of work for the series to reach perfection, and Skyrim is exactly what I had in mind so many years before. Sure, it lacks multiplayer, but that matters very little once you've immersed yourself into the massive world that you're presented with. It's an amazing and expansive fantasy that still plays well 10 years later. Just be aware that once you start, you may start to resemble a Draugr before you can pull yourself away from it. And by now you're probably wondering which is the game that I've spent the most time on. You'll probably never guess. Not in a million years. Okay, fine. Minecraft is clearly the winner among games that have sucked vast amounts of valuable time from my life. I can't tell you the number of hours that I've dropped into building and creating in this blocky masterpiece, but I feel certain that it can easily be counted by months. This is partly due to the fact that I'd first started messing around with Minecraft during the classic phase over 10 years ago. It's obviously had massive amounts of updates and additions since then, but the core of the game and the reason why I keep coming back remains the same. Even if you play survival, online PvP, or with some fancy RPG mods installed, Minecraft is a massive playground of creative freedom. From building castles and cities or exploring underground caverns for treasure, to designing logical circuits and farming machines. While it wasn't the first to introduce many of its gameplay elements, Minecraft is highly responsible for the booming popularity in sandbox, crafting, and non-horror survival games, and for good reason. The gameplay is highly addictive and entirely open. You can play it as an action-adventure by making the best enchanted weapons and armor to take on the various enemies in the game. Or try your hand at recreating King's Landing from Game of Thrones. And if you still don't think there's enough to do, just check out the massive Minecraft modding community. You can find everything from quality of life improvements to mods that completely overhaul the game, and many of them work nicely with each other to expand the possibilities of the world. There's a good chance that once you jump in, you may never come back. Now, a game of any length and replay value could be considered worth the purchase as long as it brings you the right level of enjoyment. But having one that you can spill hundreds of hours into tends to be much more worthy of a premium price tag. And as you can see from this list, many of them won't cost you nearly that much. So what do you think? Is there a game that you've sacrificed days on end with? Let me know in the comments. That's it for this session. I hope you all enjoyed. Until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side.